So this video will be a little bit different than the normal one. We are out here hauling our traps, and we got 400 traps to haul, but the primary focus is to share with you kind of the background, the cost of what it took to get to where we are today. Not only in money, but also in time and labor and just brain stress, I guess. So I started originally back on my dad's boat when I was a young kid. I was probably, I don't know, around Jace's age. You've seen Jace in the boat, in the videos, and it's so funny seeing him on this boat. It reminds me so much of me being on my dad's boat when I was a kid. Seeing him on the boat is kind of a full circle moment. So I started going on the boat with Dad when I was probably 5 or 6, and I would go quite a lot with it. That's where I learned how to bait bags, measure a band, everything that's going on in the back of the boat. And I spent a lot of time as a kid going with him, and I didn't enjoy it as much back then as I do now. I had a lot of things on land I wanted to do, but I got seasick quite a bit when I was a young kid, especially when Dad was fishing offshore. I fought that pretty hard for many years. It took me a long time to learn how to fight seasickness. So between 5 and 12 years old, I went pretty consistently with my father, and then around 12 or 13 is when I got that first boat that would only turn to the right. Didn't turn very good to the left. We'd go out. I had I think I had 150 traps when I started at the time. There was no apprenticeship program like there is today. To get into the fishery today is quite a challenge. You got to go through an apprenticeship program, log hours. Back then, when I got my license, I was able to get in just before all of that stuff started. So I lucked out there. I had my student license around 12 or 13. I had 150 traps, and we started out in that little old boat, the exhaust pipe, that little Briggs & Stratton motor that ran the hauler. And the exhaust pipe to the Briggs & Stratton motor came out right here in your face. There was no muffler, no nothing. It was just a straight Briggs & Stratton blowing right in your face. So at the time, at 12 or 13, I obviously didn't have too much money. And I don't even really remember how that purchase went of that first old original boat. I assume my dad probably helped me out and got that boat for me, and I paid him back after I got hauling my traps with it and making a little bit of money. So in those early years, my dad would actually go out and haul his 400 traps. After he got done hauling his 400 traps, he'd go in and get in that little old skiff that would only turn to the right, go back out with me and haul our 150 traps at the end of the day. So he was running 2 boats at that time. Very lucky looking back on it to have Dad as a teacher. He was a tough teacher, the old-fashioned kind of teaching. It wasn't the kind of teaching you get today, but it worked. It was effective.
What you think?
That's piss poor setup.
Maybe in today's world, we're even missing some of that, I think. So around the age 14, 15 is when I had to make my first investment into it. I had to buy a 25-foot boat, which was my first purchase, and I had to upgrade some traps and continue investing into the business. Up until that point, it was more of a hobby, more of a summertime, because I was in school full time. It was more about learning and going out in the summertime to catch lobsters and have fun. So my first boat was a 25 BHM. I think at the time that I bought that, I had around, I don't know, 400 or 500 traps, somewhere in there. My dad would continue going with me in that boat for a little bit. My mom would actually go with me a little bit. My sisters would actually come with me some friends, and then I went full-time on my own in that boat around the age of 15 or 16. So this is the point in time where I got to hire my first crew. Oddly enough, it was actually Tristan right here. Tristan was my first sternman all the way back then. So I was 15, Tristan was 13, and we went full-time in the old 25 BHM hauling 400 traps. Just the 2 of us. Me and Tristan grew up together. We've been friends since we could just walk. I've even got pictures of us both going to haul on my dad's boat when we were both young kids, and we spent a lot of time in summer break and in school together. This was officially our first jobs. We were entering the real world at a young age. So we would spend our summers and after sports practices, right? We'd go out and haul our traps.
That baseball practice.
Right.
Go haul traps after.
Yeah.
You have to do that nowadays. I'm ready to get back.
We made a little bit of money, but more importantly, that's where we learned a lot of what have given us the foundation to do what we do today. So Tristan would go with me all the way through most of high school. He went off to college, and I ended up going on to upgrade my boat again. My senior year of high school, that was the scariest moment. I had to go to the bank and get a loan, and I took out a loan for $80,000 to get the new boat. The new boat was not a new boat. It was very much a reminder of the old boat that would only turn right. She was an old used boat, and it needed a lot of work. The motor was no good in it. And it was all the way down in Long Island, New York. And it was a 39 BHM. So same brand boat, just a little larger. I got that boat and brought it home my junior summer. We put it in the dooryard, and I spent the summer working on it, fixing it up. Dad would help me and teach me a lot of the maintenance stuff. That was another educational experience where I learned all about how to keep a boat running and what goes into making them run. That motor actually was still good when I bought it, but it wasn't in very good shape. It was an old 892, which is an antique nowadays. An old 2-stroke diesel on her last legs, but we got her running. We put that boat in the water, and I had upgraded my traps several points up until this point, and I had new crew. So a lot of the traps that I used to make the foundation of where we are today, I started way back then by buying used traps for cheaper price than the new traps. Of course, before senior year, there was expenses. Bait each summer. I would probably spend $20,000, $30,000 in bait each year, and then fuel burn wasn't bad because I was in my smaller boat. After senior year is where the expenses and investment back into the business really started to ramp up. I'd start purchasing new traps. New traps are much nicer to handle. They're not quite as bony on the rail. Some of those old traps, the wire starts to poke through and the coating wears off of them and they rip your coat, rip your pants, stab you in the hand, Cody, right?
Yeah, it happens.
So starting senior year, I would begin purchasing 100 to 200 new traps each year, and I still continue to do that right to today. And now the traps are $200 a piece, so I'm spending around $30,000 to $50,000 a year just in traps and gear over the last 10 years. So probably one of the bigger expenses is bait. Bait has gone up drastically, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, but I would say a pretty conservative average for bait over the last 13 years is $100,000 a year in bait. So I'm actually gonna add this up on the bulkhead here as we go. So if you take a conservative average of $100,000 a year in bait over the last 13 years, that alone is $1.3 million spent in bait, which is crazy to put that into a 10-year or 13-year total. That's kind of sickening, really. That's a lot of money thrown overboard in bait, and probably half of that was eaten by crabs. Especially this year and last year, probably 3/4 of that was eaten by crabs. Let me just jump off the boat real quick. Look at that. Dolphins swimming all around the boat. One of the positive sides in kind of a gloomy video. All the sea life that you get to see. As of recently, we've been able to catch some of our own bait, which has drastically decreased the bait bill, especially this year and last year. We did pretty good at it. We were able to catch most of our bait ourselves, so that was awesome. And it was fun. It's fun to go out and do something different on the ocean rather than go out and go lobstering every single day. So we'll dig deeper into the expenses, but fast forward to probably one of the most interesting turning points and unexpected was the rise of the social media that was incorporated into the lobster fishing content. The rise of the social media brought so many cool opportunities to the boat. We now have Jeremy behind the camera on the boat with us. And we all have a lot of fun making these videos, bringing them to you guys, sharing what we do on the boat, sharing what we catch. And it's also opened up a lot of cool opportunities with brands and sponsorships with companies like Bombas. Bombas is actually a great clothing company. They have socks, t-shirts, underwear, slippers. They have a lot of great clothing, and they actually donate a ton of essential items to those in need. Every time you go on Bombas and make a purchase, they make a donation to those in need, to homeless shelters. So Bombas has actually donated over 140 million essential items to the homeless shelters. They're the items that are the most needed in homeless shelters: the underwear, the socks, and the t-shirts. And every time you head over to Bombas and make a purchase, they donate one to match you. And they focus on quality. These are actually high quality socks, high quality underwear, t-shirts. They're very comfortable. You won't be disappointed in them. Not only are you purchasing them for yourselves, but you're also making a difference in the world as well. So they're a great company to support. So given that it's gifting season, holiday season is right around the corner, head on over to Bombas, make your purchases, get some gifts for your loved ones, and support those in need. If you head on over to bombas.com/Jacob and use code Jacob20, you can actually get 20% off your order. So head on over to Bombas, get yourself some nice high quality clothing, and know that you're also making a difference out there as well. So thank you, Bombas, for sponsoring today's video and enabling us to bring Jeremy along and share these videos like this and continue sharing my story with you guys. Head on over, place your orders. We're gonna get back to work.
I got my Bombas socks on today.
Oh, some nice warm toes. As expensive as it was to get to where we are, I would say that the time and the stress involved in getting this to where it is today far exceeds any money that's been put into it. The money was much easier to invest than the time. A few of the obvious time and stress related investments were the obvious ones where we saw this morning starting at 3:30, 4 in the morning every morning. That's an early start and something that I had to get used to at a young age and something that I still struggle with today. And the stress investment mostly comes from not being able to shut it off. If you're a business owner, you can probably relate to this. Even on days off or even after you get home from work, you never really can fully shut it off, especially when your traps are in the ocean. We have 800 traps that stay in the ocean year round, and they're constantly on your mind and constantly add a little bit of stress to your mind all the time. Not to mention always thinking about know where you should move them next, if you should move them next. It's just a never-ending thought process in your brain. As long as those traps are in the ocean, you're thinking about them. The harder and tougher and more stressful something is, the more rewarding it is when it goes your way at the end. One of the most important factors is the fact that we don't have a schedule. We can't schedule anything in advance. We only have about a 3-4 day schedule because it heavily revolves around the weather. We have to go to haul the days that it's good weather, and we're stuck on land the days that it's bad. And we don't know which days are which until ultimately, most of the time, the night before. Speaking of stress and time, this buoy that we're circling up to now is missing. We missed it last haul. I don't know what happened to it. I was hoping we would find it today, now that it's a little better weather, but still no sign of it. We'll probably have to bring grapples, see if we can hook into it. Something must have got into it. But if we're not able to get that, that's $1,000 gone right there.
If only you hated money like I do,
That would be a good thing. That's right. You'd be happy when you pulled up and one was missing.
Another one gone!
So another large expense is, of course, the fuel that we burn. Fuel burn over the years has been pretty consistent, probably around 10 to 12,000 gallons a year. And of course, the price has fluctuated, but I'd say $50,000 a year in diesel fuel is a pretty safe assumption. So if you multiply that across 13 years, we're looking at another $650,000 just in diesel fuel. Oh man, this is kind of a depressing reflection, I guess. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this. None of these expenses are also counting prior to high school. But if you looked at all the years combined, I probably spent a good chunk of money prior to senior year. And while talking about bait and fuel, these are expenses that occur every single day, regardless of what we catch for lobsters. These are guaranteed. We're gonna spend this when we go out, and it doesn't matter how many lobsters we catch. This is just the fact. This is just the way it is. A lot of days it costs a lot more to go than we make. There is, in fact, quite a few long stretches throughout the year where it does cost more to go than it would to stay home. But we do got to go to make sure the traps are all good, traps stay clean, traps stay in line, and they're ready for when it does make more to go. So we're kind of just waiting throughout the year for the stretches where it makes sense to go. So the next expense, and probably one of the most important expenses, actually all of them are equally as important, but the next one is crew. Crew over the last 13 years has run a pretty staggering expense as well. And the interesting thing about the crew pay here in Maine is it's all done on percentage. So if the boat's doing good, the crew's doing good. If a year is pretty poor, then the crew does poor as well. In a way, the crew is just as invested as a good catch as the captains are. How old were you when you started with that?
21.
Yeah.
You were making fun of me because I wasn't even grown up yet. I was still just a boy.
And it's kind of funny, we've all worked on Dad's boat.
Yeah. Literally. That's what makes us qualified.
That's right. Tristan's dad went with my dad for years, for a long time, like 20 years. The crew is such an important piece to this whole puzzle. A good crew makes a world of difference on the boat. When there's only 3 people on a little 40-foot boat out in the middle of the ocean for 12 hours a day, you really got to get along, and you've got to be more than just crew. You got to be friends. A bad crew member can make a 40-foot boat feel like a 4-foot boat. A bad crew member will turn a 12-hour day into a 20-hour day. Yeah, I'm struggling real hard to find a good crew at the time, but we're doing our best with what we got. And, you know, we're getting by. We're doing what we got to. But no, seriously. We got a good crew right now. We all have a lot of fun on the boat. We're more friends than crew, I think. I don't think we're co-workers. We're just good friends out here catching crabs. So crew pay, again, over the last 13 years has fluctuated a lot. Because pay does fluctuate a lot year to year. Catch is up and down, and so is the price. You got 2 big factors going up and down. The pay is extremely inconsistent, but over the last 13 years, I'd say that I've consistently paid the crew members between $100,000 and $150,000 between the 2 of them. If you took an average of 125 times 13, that's somewhere around another 1.5. We're getting up there now. All right, on to the next financial investment, and one of the most important, again, I'm gonna keep saying that it's the most important because every single one of these pieces, again, is very important to everything working, but this one is probably the most essential, and that's the boat. And I started out in that little old junk boat back when I was a little kid. Worked my way up through several boats, the 25 BHM. So that one during high school, of course, $25,000 back when I was in high school, that was a terrifying amount of money, and I was fortunate to not only have my father as a teacher, but he helped me purchase that first boat. As I would haul my traps each week, I would pay him the money back, and that's where I learned the foundation of business in general, in money, in paying back debts. There you go. Take them back to the hardware store. You take bolts.
The best thing I ever bought.
You take bolts out of it, and they just keep restocking. It's a good.
Who do you think restocks them, Jacob? Santa Claus?
That was where that all started. So I got a refresher course on it my senior year when I purchased my 39 BHM. I did that through a bank, and that was extremely scary. I grew up in a pretty small town, old-fashioned way of life, and debt was really frowned upon, and debt was something we really tried to avoid. So getting the $80,000 loan from the bank was absolutely terrifying. Me and Dad went down to New York. We bought a 39-foot boat for $80,000 at the time, was a very good price, even though the motor was old and worn out. So I bought that and we trucked it back home. We fixed it up, got it running, got it in the water, and I fished that my senior year of high school. And I blew my engine that fall and had to buy a new $50,000 engine. So at that time I had $130,000, probably $150,000, $160,000 in that boat by the end of my senior year. And that pattern did not change. That continued all the way up until right now. I bought this boat. Actually, when I bought this boat, it had a blown engine, and I bought this one for $140,000. I bought this boat for with a blown engine, and then I bought a $80,000 motor to put in it, so I had $220 in this one, and then I fixed it up more, so probably around $300, $350 I got in this one. And they constantly need more investments. They constantly need maintenance, whether it's this boat or any of my previous boats. We're constantly working on them to keep them running, which those are continuous expenses that go each year, regardless of what you're in for a boat. We got to put them on the beach throughout the year, clean the bottoms of them, keep zincs on the bottoms of them. We got to get under the floor, change the oil, keep the engines running, change turbos, injectors, manifolds, clean after coolers. There's an endless list. No matter how much maintenance we do on land to try to avoid breaking down at sea, sometimes it's inevitable, and we do have breakdowns at sea. We blow hoses. We have to try to make repairs at sea the best we can. And a lot of those skills that I learned from my father when I was younger, it come into play then when you're at sea and you need to try to get the boat back running to get back either home or to finish the day out. We are around $600,000 in upgrading through the boats alone, not counting any of the maintenance. This is going to be a rough figure, but I don't know. Let's just call it somewhere around $1 million for boats and upgrades and maintenance. And all of these boats that I've upgraded into over the years have basically been done in the cheapest possible way you could do it. I always purchased old run-down junk boats and fixed them up to the point where I was comfortable in them. I never went the route of building a new one. To get it exactly the way you want it, you do have to build a new boat and start from scratch. The ultimate luxury. Like that is nice, and I do envy the guys that have gone that route and come out in the end with the exact boat that they want. But this boat is very close to the exact boat that I want. Ultimately, at the end of the year, I can catch almost the same amount of lobsters in this boat that I would be able to in a larger boat if I were to build a brand new one. But still, there's something nice about building a new boat, building it exactly how you want it. It's something I have always wanted to do, and I still might. I've actually been thinking about that a lot lately, especially now that we're doing the purse-seining, the pogie seining in the summer. This boat's gotten pretty small for that. We're doing the filming on the boat, and oftentimes we have a lot more than 3 people on the boat. This boat has kind of been shrinking over the past few years. There's really not many good options for upgrading into a used boat from here. Really, the only option to upgrade farther than this is to build a new one. It's another big investment, scary investment. Cody and Tristan are cheering me on in the back. Cody and Tristan are saying, with the money, you can't take it with you, so you might as well spend it on your dream boat. They don't need to cheer me on, believe me, I'm plenty tempted on my own. I really would like to do it, but to build that new boat, exactly how I want it, the size that I want it, you're looking at $800,000 or $900,000 in just that boat, which is pretty much more than I've had in all of my boats combined leading up until this point.
You gotta spend money to make money.
Another unique thing is that the boats are owner-operator only, so the captain of the boat has to be the owner of the boat. I can't hire somebody to come out and run the boat for me. I actually have to be present and on the boat. And that prevents large corporations from being developed and large fleets of boats. All right, so the next big expense item are the traps themselves, and the traps are ultimately what make our money. They're the ones catching the lobsters. So they're probably the most important piece, along with the boat and the crew and the trucks. Traps, this one has changed drastically since COVID. Previous to COVID, the traps were only like $120, $130 a piece. After 2020, they're now $200 a trap, which is nuts because we buy at least 100 traps every single year. Oftentimes, we'll buy 200 traps in a year. So it's somewhere between $20,000 and $40,000 just in traps. That's not counting the rope and the buoys to tie them together and set them. So you're looking at, say, $30,000 a year for the last 13 years. So we'll call the traps and gear $400,000. But then we also need to factor in some trap maintenance in between buying the 100 to 200 each year. Sometimes we'll have some traps that get old while they're in the water, and we'll have to maintain them while they're in the water. You've seen us deal with the borers. The borers are something that we've dealt with a lot historically, but going forward, I don't think we're gonna have to deal with them too much because we've switched to metal runners. Traditionally, we always had wood runners on the bottom of the traps, and the borers would eat the wood runners off the bottom of the traps. So we had to constantly put new runners on the traps, which weren't that expensive in money. It was just time that cost. It was such a pain to try to change runners out here on the ocean and keep them on the traps. So let's just call the traps and maintenance on traps 500 over the last 13 years. Which leaves us with only one thing left, which is just miscellaneous to cover a bunch of the small stuff. The safety equipment on the boat is extremely expensive to keep up to date. Insurance on the boat, even the small things like clothes, boots, food on the boat, that all add up a lot after 13 years of doing it. So between the safety and survival equipment on the boat and the insurance, which take up bulk of the miscellaneous, and then the other stuff, we're gonna jot down 200,000 to cover that. That should cover us for most of the expenses over the last 13 years. So that comes to a grand total of 5.3 million, kind of a staggering number, and one that I kind of wish that I hadn't added up, but too late now. Kind of crazy to look at it in that perspective. So while it's not the cheapest career to get into, not just from a financial standpoint, but also from a stress and time consumption standpoint, it does come with its benefits, and it's something that I wouldn't trade for the world. If I could go back and rewind time, I would do it all again. It's given me the ability to come out and make a living fishing, which is something that I haven't covered a lot of. It's just that I really enjoy fishing. No matter what it is, even if I'm not fishing for lobsters for a job, any days off I'm gone fishing for something else. So to be able to come out and make a living fishing for something is a dream come true for me. It's given me the ability to make my living as my own boss and have the freedom of being the boss. The freedom within the confine of the weather, of course, but to be able to come out on the water and make my living with people like Tristan and Cody, who are more friends than co-workers, and have fun doing it is a dream come true as well. There's a lot of dream come trues in here. I know we focused a lot on the negatives that come with the job, but so many positives that come from it. The pride that comes with keeping a family tradition alive and be able to make a living right in my hometown and have kids of my own and now start to teach them and keep the cycle going. It's been super cool and super fun, and then being able to bring the social media into it as well and start to share stuff with you guys and with my family. It's all been an incredible journey. It's something I hope I can continue doing for years to come, even if we slow down a little bit on the full-time lobstering side. I always want to continue lobstering to some scale. So thank you guys for sticking around to the end of this one. I know it's a little different video, but wanted to give you a little background into what has gone into getting this to where it is today, to give you the appreciation for it that we have. So until next time, Cody, let's get him in the boat!
Get him in the boat!